Zoro. Mike. Okay, I will read. Oh, no thanks. Yeah. Morning, colleagues from the media, those who've tuned in virtually and those who are present here at GCIS. Welcome to the Pulse Media Briefing. I would like to thank you for joining us as our Commissioner responsible for the Pulse, Commissioner Anele Poya, will be releasing the contents of the Pulse that covers the period 1 July to 30 September 2023. And I think in this briefing, we'll also brief you about the resolutions of plenary of the Public Service Commission that was held last week. Plenary is the highest decision-making body of the Public Service Commission. But without any further ado, Commissioner, if you can release the contents of the Pulse.
Thank you very much, Humphrey, and thanks to all the ladies and gentlemen that are here. I am joined today by Professor Mandla Makhanya, a commissioner of the National of the Public Service Commission, who is based at head office. He will also be talking more about the decisions that we took in the plenary meeting that we had last week. Let me take this opportunity to welcome all of you and thank you for having honored this invitation. And we are, of course, as a usual practice, releasing the copy of the Pulse of the Public Service Commission, or the Pulse Bulletin, which is a quarterly news bulletin that we issue as the Public Service Commission as a way of accounting to the public as well in terms of the work that we are doing as the Commission. This Pulse will be covering the work that we did from the quarter starting from the 1st of July to the 30th of September 2023. And it will be covering the following areas. The Public Service Commission's perspective on public service reforms towards professionalization, the non-payment of suppliers within 30 days. We will also be dealing with understanding the constitutional principle of transparency, organizational design for impact towards the next generation of public servant, and then we will be dealing with a number of complaints and grievances, of course, that we also release on a quarterly basis. The symposium on whistleblowing. We just need to indicate that after extensive engagements with the National Treasury, we can safely report today that the item on the payment, the 30-day payment of suppliers, is back. We will also be reporting on that. And so basically, those are the areas we will be focusing on, as well as we will have, we need to inform the media that on Friday, the 8th of December, we will be joining the rest of the world in commemorating the International Anti-Corruption Day. Our event will be held at UNISA, and you are all invited to attend and cover the event. And the event will be addressed by the Deputy President, Mr. Paul Mashatile, as a keynote speaker. And the theme for this year is Uniting Against Corruption, how to better collaborate and improve implementation and impact. And it's a day that we commemorate on an annual basis, and it is an important day, as we all know that we are faced with a challenge of high levels of corruption in the country that, of course, have an impact on service delivery. So you are invited to cover that day because it is an important day. And we all know that corruption is not only in the public service. Corruption is in the public and the private sector, and it affects service delivery quite negatively. But we always encourage people to report all acts of corruption to our National Anti-Corruption Hotline, which is 0800 701 701. Now, the Public Service Commission recently hosted a conference regarding a report that we developed as the Commission on Public Service Reforms. So what we did, we invited key stakeholders from government, the private sector, the media, as well as the academia, to come and deliberate on the report and feed or beef up the report so that we have a detailed kind of a route map towards the professionalization of the public service. And the areas that the conference dealt with was the issue of the national macro-organization and reconfiguration of government, the filling of positions of directors general, a proposal that we have of the appointment of the head of public service, and also strengthening the Public Service Commission to be able to support the president in reducing the average time to fill the positions of DGs. You know that sometimes it takes up to 26 months for the filling of the posts. So we want to reduce it to at least 8 months, and as soon as we are able to even reduce it lesser. So those are the areas that we dealt with in that conference, which was, of course, addressed by the chairperson of the Public Service Commission, Professor Somadota Fikeni, and as well as the Minister of Public Service and Administration, Mayor Nokolo Kivit. The areas that the conference dealt with were the areas, for example, around performance management system and its limitations, the importance of the relationship between planning and budgeting, and understanding the inputs, outputs, and outcomes in terms of the work of the public servants, and also the state's failure to provide services to the people. Of course, we reflected on the need to revive the institutions of government to be the ideal institutions that are anchored on delivering services to the people. Continuous professional development so that public servants, when they're in the public service, they continue to get trained to be able to understand their responsibilities and their work, and also the bridging the gap between politics and administration in trying to synergize the relations in that level, and the importance of accountability as well as resuscitation of Batupili. We had this buzzword Batupili, and it was a popular word which guided the public servants, but with time people are no longer talking about it, and it's important that every public servant understands that they put people first. We also deliberated on the challenges of supply chain as well as procurement, and the challenges of leadership in government institutions, and the the silo mentality of governments, where government departments work in silos when they deliver services to the same people. So after the conference, we invited inputs from the different stakeholders. We received those inputs, and our office is still consolidating those inputs so that we can be able to finalize the report before the end of the current financial year, which is 2023-2024. Now, if you go to the Pulse, the hard copy of the Pulse, you will find this report on page 2. It moves from page 2 to page 3. And then we received a report from National Treasury on the payment of the suppliers. And sadly, we must indicate, sadly, there was a massive regression from the last time we got the report, which was in the first quarter of the 2022-23 financial year. There is a massive regression in terms of the amount of money that is owed to the suppliers by the government departments, with invoices that are older than 30 days. That regression accounts for 12%, because the national and provincial departments combined, they account for 117,158 invoices. And those invoices, when you convert them to the rand value, they amount to 11.1 billion rands. That's the money that is sitting in government for services that have been given, but the service providers have not been paid for the services that they have rendered. And this is the issue that we have always raised as the Public Service Commission, because most of the affected service providers are your SMMEs, who go and borrow money in order to deliver the services. And after borrowing money to deliver services, when they have to be paid, they don't get paid. So that it's that 11.1 billion, it's 12% higher than the 8.6 billion that was owed at the first quarter of 2023-24. So we must say that National Treasury reported that all government departments, the national departments, they submitted their reports to the National Treasury, which is a good thing, and it is an improvement. And similarly, all provincial treasuries have also submitted their reports for the first quarter to the National Treasury as well. Now, on page 4, there's a table there that illustrates, in terms of the national departments, how, and it shows that out of the 40 national departments, only 15 have complied. Only 15, which means 25 government departments have not complied with the 30-day payment, which is quite serious, and it's a matter that needs to be addressed. We will engage, of course, with those departments. And if you look at page 5 of the bulletin, it gives you then the monthly comparison in terms of the rand value of invoices that are not paid within 30 days. And you will see that service providers are indeed in trouble. Now, when you go to table 2 will give you the number of unpaid invoices per department, as well as the amount. And we must hasten to indicate that health is always topping the list of departments that are non-compliant. with this information, you will see the health owes 690 invoices that amount to 40 million rands. Water and sanitation, 657 invoices that amount to 2.7 million. Public works and infrastructure, 36 invoices amounting to 22 million. Home affairs, 10 invoices, they account for 25,268. Agriculture, land reform and rural development, 7 invoices, they owe 1.8 million. Tourism, 6 invoices of 20,094. So, but if we then single out the main contributing departments towards the non-payment of invoices, we have listed them there. There, the Department of Health is there, Home Affairs, Correctional Services, Defense, Military Veterans, South African Police Service, Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development, Transport, Water and Sanitation. Water and Sanitation has got 2 accounts. They also have a trading account. It also owes. Public Works and Infrastructure, the same. They also have a trading account, which also owes, as well as tourism. So those are the departments. And then you go to table 3, which then speaks about the table 3. You will find it on page 6. It speaks about the provincial governments. And you will find out there that the total number of invoices that were paid after 30 days by provincial government departments amounted to 90,973 invoices. And it was 9.9 billion rands. And Gauteng contributed with the highest number of invoices that were not paid, and which were about 45,538, and they amounted to 3.5 of the 9.9 billion. And Northwest as well, Eastern Cape, those were the 3 highest contributors to the non-payment of invoices. And we want to re-emphasize the importance of paying government suppliers within 30 days as required by law. This will assist small businesses to stay afloat, as I indicated earlier, that small businesses are played out of the game because they are not paid their invoices. And the same departments are quick to kick them out when they cannot deliver on time because of the resource constraints caused by the departments themselves. Moving forward, we also reflect on the principle of transparency, which has a direct impact on the liability of public authorities towards citizens by enabling citizens to obtain all information regarding their activities. Transparency is subtly intertwined with accountability, and on the other hand, transparency encourages openness. It is guaranteed under Section 32 of the Constitution of the Republic, which states that everyone has a right of access to information held by the state, and the information that is held by another person and that is required for the protection of their rights. In this regard, the Promotion of Access to Information Act number 2 of 2000 was enacted to give effect to the constitutional right to foster the culture of transparency in the public service. A complementary requirement to the PAIA in promoting transparency and is the Promotion of Administrative Justice Act, which is called PAJA, which requires the provision of reasons for administrative actions. So transparency and accountability are critical for the efficient functioning of the modern economy and for fostering a social well-being. To this extent, it serves to ensure that information available can be used to measure the performance of the authorities and guard against the possible misuse of power. While corruption in the public sector is by no means a new phenomenon, the nature and extent of corruption manifesting primarily through unlawful procurement of contracts was not fully comprehended until now. Corruption is largely due to the public officials who are serving in their personal, factional, and private interest rather than the interest of the citizens and the Constitution. In the broad sense, every act of corruption must involve some kind of the conflict of interest. And according to Corruption Perception Index, which is leading global indicator for public sector corruption, which scores and ranks 180 countries and territories across the globe, the global average trend was at 43 in 2022. The absence of transparency through providing access to information can lead to government institutions to perform poorly. Transparency in the procurement process might encourage taxpayers to improve their level of trust in government and perception that there is efficient and economic use of public funds. That article, the full article, will be found on page 6 of the Pulse bulletin. The reform of the public service in South Africa is underway, and it promises to end corruption, state capture, and low levels of productivity and performance. The next generation public service needs to have true social impact and world-class operational efficiency and effectiveness. A public service that helps South Africa overcome its challenges and support moves towards better future for all is required. And one of the points of focus for quality public service in South Africa is organizational design for impact. In the public service, if the public service is to have a deep and lasting impact, making the lives of the citizens and communities better than they are currently, the public service departments need to be designed for impact, which means when you design your organogram, it must be designed for the end product, which is service delivery. And it must not just be designed to create posts, but it must be designed to serve the people. And then posts get designed to respond to the needs of the people. So the government needs to see itself as an impact investor, and the funds allocated to every department are intended to have real measurable impact, and that should be done. It needs to become more agile, responsive, and innovative. And the key to becoming more impactful are the following 5 features of an organizational design for impact: a clear purpose and mission, a collaborative culture, a flexible structure, skilled and motivated staff, as well as robust performance management system. When you look at it at face value, it looks very straightforward. But we all know the complications of change management. Courage at all levels. When we say all levels, we speak about the ministerial level, the executive manager level, senior manager level, and so on and so forth. Courage is needed to enable the shift from activities management to impact management. Now, as proposed action to achieve organizational design for impact, the Public Service Commission will identify 3 major initiatives which will be used as a demonstration projects for impact-based organizational design starting from the 2024-25 financial year. And the intention of that work would be to, now, number 1, to showcase how changed organizational design and behavior focused on embracing outcomes and impact can make a difference to performance. Number 2, in understanding this work, the Commission will leverage the expertise and knowledge of those already engaged in impact-based activities in the non-profit sector and those who work on impact evaluation. Thirdly and lastly, the Commission will engage appropriate facilitator with expertise in design thinking, agile leadership and effective public services for social, environmental and economic impact to enable these prototype projects to proceed. The full article is on page 8 in the Pulse. In terms of the overall number of grievances handled by the Public Service Commission, as at September 2023, the Commission registered 302 grievances, and 45 of those grievances were not properly referred, which accounts for 15%, and 257 were properly referred. And those that were still not finalized at departmental level were referred back to the departments. So what the Commission then noted was that of the 257 grievances that were properly referred, approximately 95% were referred by employees, whilst only 5% was referred by the executive authorities. The referral of grievances by employees is an indication that the departments have failed to resolve these grievances internally within the prescribed timeframes. Irrespective of whether the referral is by the EA or the aggrieved employees, properly referred grievances are dealt with through investigation and or mediation. Now, if you look at figure 4 there on page 10, you will see the breakdown of the reports. I mean of the grievances, and you will see that there were 78 unfair treatment grievances, which were of which 45 were from national departments and 33 were from the 9 provinces. So you can see that there's a lot of polluted working environment, strained relationship between supervisors and supervisees at the level of government, bullying, victimization, and so on and so forth. Those account for the unfair treatment. And in other cases, you would see that some of the employees don't understand that they may be assigned to do certain ad hoc functions that would be outside their job descriptions, of course, for a temporary period. So they would take that as a victimization, whilst in the true sense, it is not a victimization. So in view of the number of cases that were internally resolved by the Public Service Commission's intervention, departments and organized labor are encouraged to consider mediation instead of already declaring disputes. And that mediation would work well as an alternative means to resolve those conflicts. So that's the encouragement we are making as the Commission. And in terms of the complaints, you would know that we have a mandate to investigate complaints. So we received a total of 795,760 calls in the National Anti-Corruption Hotline. So we record them in our case management system. And a cumulative figure of 28,232 cases, case reports were generated out of that. Now, if you look at table 5, you will see the 495 grievances that were recorded during the second quarter of the 2023-2024 financial year. For the period 1st April 2023 to 30 September 2023, the Public Service Commission handled a total of 136 complaints at national and provincial level. And from those complaints, 25 were received through the National Anti-Corruption Hotline, and the remaining 111 were recorded through other means such as emails, posts, walk-ins, social media, and so on and so forth. And as of 30 September 2023, 76 complaints, which account for 56%, were closed and 60 were in progress. So there is work in progress in terms of that. But then emanating from the investigations conducted and in the instances where allegations were found to be substantiated, the Public Service Commission made recommendations to executive authorities to, amongst others, facilitate institution of disciplinary action against implicated officials, approach courts to set aside regular appointments, and to this end, investigation officers of the Public Service Commission have in some instances been requested to testify in disciplinary hearings. Some of the PSC's involvement in dealing with complaints contributed positively to ensuring that citizens' concerns and addresses were effectively and efficiently addressed. A complaint regarding an alleged non-payment of an invoice for service rendered to the Department of Community Safety in Gauteng was reported to the PSC. Through the PSC's intervention, the department paid the money to the service provider, and the matter was closed. We also had complaints around irregular appointments, which were lodged against the Department of Correctional Services, and the PSC approached the department to correct the appointment. But then we note as the PSC that most of our investigation yielded positive results on improving good governance and accountability in the public service. In issuing recommendations, the PSC encouraged departments to maintain the principles conferred in Section 195, subsection 1 of the Constitution. The constitutional values and principles indicate the type of public administration South Africans aspire to have. So you will find that full article on page 11. And the Public Service Commission, in partnership with the civil society and business sector, hosted a whistleblower symposium under the theme, The Extent and Nature of the Protection of Whistleblowers in South Africa. We all know that we have a challenge of whistleblowers, and some of the people are afraid to blow the whistle because they feel that they are not safe. They fear for their lives. But we want to encourage them, and we want to make an undertaking that we will do all in our best to ensure that they get protected. This hosting emanated from the 2022 International Anti-Corruption Day. That's where we then decided to have the whistleblower symposium. Delegates included representatives from government, organized business, non-governmental organizations, media, organized labor, academia, and professional bodies, as well as the affected whistleblowers. And the symposium adopted various resolutions aimed at combating and preventing crime and corruption. The key resolutions include, amongst others, the need for the establishment of a whistleblowers protection house to be run by the Disclosure Protection Tribunal to protect employees against reprisal or occupational detriment. The following resolutions were agreed on. The need to raise awareness and provide training on how reporting should be handled. Promoting a culture of whistleblowing amongst government personnel and civil society. Supporting the legislative reforms proposed, which will enhance protection of whistleblowers and closing gaps and challenges identified by the Protected Disclosures or in the Protected Disclosures Act and the Witness Protection Act. drive the promotion of whistleblowing through professionalization framework, develop a whistleblowing framework with clear directives, creating of a fund for whistleblowers to determine, rationalize the number of anti-corruption hotlines, to prioritize reforms that will ensure the protection of whistleblowers, and the need for an efficient mechanism to protect the identity of whistleblowers and find a civil society organization which government will support to get better protection. That article is on page 18. We close our report with the good stories, the work that the Public Service Commission has done physically to help people. And in the period in question, the Public Service Commission assisted 3 orphaned siblings, aged 21, 19, and 18, in acquiring ID documents after 5 years of fruitless trips to the Department of Home Affairs. And today we can proudly announce that the trio who lost their parents whilst they were minors and were fostered by 3 different legal guardians, of whom all of whom have passed away. We can safely say today they have their IDs, and they are very happy to have received those IDs. That happened when the PSC met the social workers and the Brakpan Home Affairs senior officials on the 22nd of August. And in a meeting, that meeting facilitated the application for those IDs, and within 4 weeks, those IDs were issued. So we are happy to announce that. And as I conclude, I want to invite Commissioner Mandla Makhanya to come and share the decisions of the plenary meeting that was held last week from the 28th to the 30th of November at the Commission House. Thank you very much to all of you. Commissioner Makhanya.
No, thank you so much, Commissioner Koya. Just to say quickly that our plenary was held, against the backdrop of the challenges, that are confronting us in the country. You know about austerity measures that are in place. So we had to take, some kind of serious, decisions insofar as ensuring that budget-wise, we present ourselves in a manner that is actually going to be assisting us not only to sacrifice the work that had to be done, but rather to handle the work within the context of ensuring that we can still forge ahead, deliver on our commitments on the basis of the APP, albeit within the context of ensuring that in some way, some of the activities will obviously then be scaled down. And you'll note similarly that in some instances, what we had then done in order not to compromise on the question of our own commitments was to scale down on the activities, particularly when it comes to inspections. That is, whereas we were going to be moving in a full scale at various parts, of where the work had to be done, but rather than confine ourselves to doing that work within the environments that will be close by, so that cost implication-wise, we can be in a position to handle that without actually any compromise in the process. The plenary, as Commissioner Koya has indicated, is the highest decision-making body of our Public Service Commission. It's held at Prof. Stan Sangweni boardroom at our PSC Commission House in this city of Tshwane. So the matters that we then looked at were also inclusive of public service reforms, which are fairly critical when one begins to have a gaze into the future that we all aspire to. It is important for us to begin reflecting, on the question of looking primarily into the whole notion of how our effectiveness can be felt, because public service, comes at a huge cost, primarily as a result of what we witness, in various communities. Challenges that are cropping up from time to time are all reflective of the pain, that our communities are going through. So in our case, as a Public Service Commission, who are primarily then having this, responsibility of looking into ensuring that public service is within reach for our own communities. We had to look at these public service reforms in order to ensure that we can live up to what, in our view, is a critical component of our own operations, of ensuring that as the state, we are committed as a developmental state, we produce our work, and we deliver, as a capable, effective, and developmental state. And that insofar as our work is concerned, that effectiveness and efficiencies are at the core of the work that we do. So the question then of the implementation of professionalization framework is a critical one, because as you all have appreciated, that with this framework having been adopted, by our state, in October of last year, Commissioner Toia has just given you full details of the work that happened in July, where all of us had put our heads together. That is not only just ourselves as the PSC, but also the National School of Government, the Department of Public Administration, Public Service and Administration, but also the Department of Monitoring and Evaluation. This is important because those reflections had begun to look into how the implementation, is going to be happening, so that we don't find ourselves having this brilliant kind of product, but find suddenly that when it comes to implementation, there's a lot of questions, that accompany our failures in the process. So that work is currently underway, as he has indicated, and our view is that we'll then be producing a fully fledged comprehensive plan of implementation. And in our view, this is actually one of the greatest, achievements, in the current administration, because we would like to see a situation where our functionality as a state should not in any way be affected or disturbed in whatever manner by the instabilities, that may be beyond our own control. There is progress that is currently being made, on the PSC bill. It's a very interesting development, because remember that currently, in the manner in which we are operating, we are focusing on our own performance at the national level and at the provincial level. Now, with the bill, once it has gone through its own processes and reaches the point of being an act after adopted by our own government, we'll then be having a situation where our own gaze will then reach the local government sphere. But at the same time, even the SOEs will no longer be operating, outside our domain of oversight. So it's a very important development for us, because it is our view that once then we can have that kind of oversight, we'll be in a better position to report, but also to insist, on performance in those areas as the Public Service Commission. There are two key projects that we are currently driving as the Public Service Commission. One is on functional accommodation, and the other one is on ICTs. These projects are critical insofar as looking primarily into the spaces in which we are operating as the state. Remember that when we are talking about, let's take an example of home affairs. We're thinking about our own communities that are visiting these places across the length and breadth of this country. If we don't have facilities that are conducive to producing the work that is required, but at the same time of welcoming those who are supposed to be there, if you are thinking about people who may be actually flocking into those places, some elderly, some with disabilities and so on, of different natures and so on, we should be having spaces that can accommodate them as and when they are in such spaces, but also ensuring that they are efficient, which then means that not only just the facility in terms of brick and mortar in this instance, but the facility that is also highly equipped insofar as ICTs are concerned, so that we can then be talking about a situation where, in terms of our own functioning, we can operate optimally using, these platforms for those who do not necessarily have to be there, present in those kinds of domains. We've made huge advances in these two projects already. We've already made our own presentations, to our own portfolio committees beyond just working with our own stakeholders. The portfolio committees have been very excited about the submissions that we have made. These submissions are very clear about what kind of opportunities lie at our disposal insofar as these two projects are concerned. I mean, thinking laterally in the context of functional accommodation, there is no reason why in our own environment we should be banking on getting that kind of facility from those quote-unquote providers. We should in fact be the ones who are offering such opportunities to those who want to operate because of the number of facilities that we have, not only in this country, but also beyond the borders of this country. So if we then put them in a manner where they can be fully functional, we stand a better chance of even eking out some kind of resources out of those facilities for the sake of ourselves as a state, in order to ensure that the state can have the resources that will be emanating from there. Similarly, on the question of ICTs, if you look at some of our own departments that have these highly sophisticated ICTs and the manner in which they are functioning, we are saying what stops us from extending the same facility to all our government departments so that all of them can be fully functional and make use of this opportunity of the ICTs in this particular manner. This has been taken seriously from the side of the state after our own submission, and the Department of Communications and Digital Space has taken that report, and it's now going to be submitted or rather reflected by the Interministerial Committee that comprises of various ministries that are obviously going to be taking this process forward. But these two flagship projects have actually assisted us also to have this forward march, in the sense that we made a presentation to all our directors general of all the departments in this country. After receiving the reports on the two projects, the directors general then took it upon themselves to say they are also going to be putting or setting in motion a process of having their own task team that is going to be now making follow-ups on the implementation of all the commitments that we've made insofar as these two projects are concerned, which is actually very exciting because it then says that we are beginning to make this kind of a leap forward. Once again, something that should not be missed in this instance is that we were also so excited to discover that from the side of the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure, that the report that we had actually submitted on functional accommodation, they have taken some of those particular submissions together with the submissions of the Auditor General and included them in their APP for 2024-2025. And that begins to tell you that we are now seeing this kind of movement where we are working in a cooperative manner, which is then going to be bringing about the kinds of opportunities that we're talking about, of successes that otherwise we would have missed had it not been for this kind of an arrangement. We also looked at pursuing the return to work of employees, that were placed on suspension for a period of 60 days and above. I mean, we know that it has raised a huge controversy, when the PSC raised this question to say, we can't afford a situation where we have people who are sitting at home, for such an extended period of time, but are being paid from the coffers of the state without anything that the state is actually enjoying from them. So we then said, based on that, we will then be driving the agenda of ensuring that all of them should then return to work so that we can then be guaranteed of what is it that we are paying for. In instances where there are certain cases that still need to be pursued, let them be presented in a formal sense of the word, in a fresh kind of sense, to say there is a reason why this has to happen in this particular fashion and so on and so forth. It's an important one. At this stage, there is a conversation that is currently underway between the chairperson of the Public Service Commission and the minister, who's responsible for public service and administration. This actually is going to be assisting us to reach that conclusive space where we can then take this process forward. Because in our view, immediately when we do that, we can then account for all those millions of rands that are being paid to people that in real sense we can't say we are gaining anything out of. So it's a very interesting development from our side. That's why we are pursuing it with this kind of commitment. And then finally, the implementation of our own recommendations by departments. I mean, Commissioner Toye has just mentioned that based on this report of the Pulse that is being presented today, we are saying as we offer these recommendations to executive authorities, to departments, that is heads of departments and so on, we are not simply just doing it because there is nothing else to do. We are doing it with a very clear determination that those recommendations must be implemented. If they can't be implemented, then there must be a submission that explains why they cannot be implemented. So it's not just a question of liking it or not liking it. So we stand firm on this one to say we are a constitutional body. So making such recommendations mean that those recommendations should actually then be carried out in order for us to make this kind of progress forward. So we've agreed then on finding various means and ways of ensuring that we proceed with our own work, as I've indicated right up front, regardless of the austerity measures that are in place. There is something that we've already, pushed up the agenda, that with the implementation of professionalization, we've said to ourselves, it's going to require a lot of work, but at the same time, it's also going to require a lot of human resources, at our disposal as the PSC, but also as the National School of Government. What we have then done at this stage is to work in close proximity and in partnership with the United Nations Development Program. We are doing so primarily as a result of the fact that they are bringing to bear in this environment opportunities of their own exposure, not only just in our country, but in other countries, so that we cannot reinvent the wheel. Whatever they have been exposed to, which has worked in those countries, let us actually take that and ensure that we can implement them in our own environment. So in our case, we are working very, very well, because the departments that are directly implicated in this case, the National School of Government, the Department of Public Service and Administration, ourselves, the Department of Planning and Monitoring and Evaluation, have to be guaranteed that at the time when this process has to kick in of implementation, that everything just runs well. So beyond just the United Nations Development Program, we are also going to be renewing our own memorandum of understanding, and in some instances, memoranda of agreements with various institutions, inclusive of universities of technology, and any other institution that is going to be assisting us as we actually do this work of taking our processes forward in order to ensure that the state, or rather our own communities, are beneficiaries of these kinds of developments and reforms that are currently underway from the side of the state. And then we are also strengthening our own collaborations with institutions, supporting democracy. You know that we are working very well with the one that is with us here, in our province, because the headquarters are right here. But we've since discovered that in our own provinces, that level of coordination and collaboration is almost non-existent. It's been raised at various quarters. I mean, in my case, currently serving as a caretaker commissioner in our Northwest province, that it became apparent when we're looking at other cases like this one of housing, that it became apparent that with the Human Rights Commission having been the one driving that agenda, having invited us to be part and parcel of that process, we need to begin strengthening these kinds of relationships. So we're going to be doing it across the length and breadth of this country so that they can be happening in a similar manner, akin to what is happening right here with these institutions supporting democracy in our own headquarters. And we are also continuing to conduct our own follow-up inspections. Remember that the initial view from our side, before we could even go to the plenary, was that, with these austerity measures, most probably we may have to forego some of these inspections because of the cost implications associated with them. But we then went to the plenary and said to ourselves, we've already made these commitments. So what we should be doing rather is to seek these resources. So fundraising is already underway because we said we need to supplement, the resources that we have at our disposal. Instead of compromising on the work that has to be done, we are then doing that fundraising in order to ensure that we cannot, in any case, find ourselves having dropped whatever commitments we'd already made. So that's basically where we are. So that's how we concluded on our plenary last week, which was, Wednesday or Thursday. But thank you so much.
Thanks, Prof. Thanks, Prof, for that report on plenary, and thanks, Commissioner Koya, for that comprehensive report relating to the pulse. I think it's almost 11 o'clock. I think I'll just take one round of questions if you've got any questions. Maybe let's start here in the room first. Sweaten, okay, and then Ish.
We don't have questions on the platforms for now.
Well, okay. No, it's fine. If we don't have questions on the platform and then inside the room we don't have questions, then it means then we've come to the end of the briefing. Thank you very much. Yeah, he wants to have, I think, an interview probably.
So
with the two of you, yes.
Oh.